How many times have you heard the term world class? If you're like me, you've heard it all the time about everything. And the reality is, it's just not possible to be world class in everything. Nuclear is an area where Canada early and often put itself on the map on a global basis. We've got two guests today who are going to help us explore some of those realities of the world-class nature of nuclear energy here in Ontario, in Canada, and how through the work of the Green Ribbon Panel and the recommendations for moving forward, we can use that incredible advantage, leverage that incredible advantage to build not just a great economic and energy future, clean energy future for Ontario and Canada, but really be a driving force for providing this incredible technology on a global basis. So our two guests today, Maura McDonald from Candu Energy. She's the VP of Key Accounts and Stakeholder Relations, and John MacQuarrie, who is the President and CEO of BWXT Canada. If you ever get the chance to go to Cambridge and see their manufacturing facility, it is awe-inspiring. Let's give it over to Maura to introduce herself and what Candu Energy is up to these days.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, I'm the VP of Key Accounts and Stakeholders. So Candu Energy is a subsidiary of our Greater Atkins-Realis, and that's a 40,000 person workforce really working on large infrastructure projects. And Candu Energy, we oversee the Candu global fleet in terms of OEM services. So we're delivering plant equipment, field services, which is maintenance of these stations, as well as key engineering services.
Wonderful. And John?
So BWXT or BWX Technologies is a nuclear products and services company for nuclear power, and we serve the nuclear medicine market with products that we provide for isotopes for nuclear medicines and some radiopharmaceuticals. We make, as you mentioned, really unique products in Cambridge, Ontario, where we make large, complex components for nuclear power plants. It's a unique facility in North America. It's a real, I think, treasure for Canada. And, that's one of the biggest parts of our business. But we provide a lot of services to our customers in nuclear power.
Right. For much of my life growing up in Toronto, in the summer, smog days were just a reality, just a fact of life. And the decision that Ontario made to close all of the remaining coal-fired plants and to start building towards that clean energy future really required nuclear to come on stream. It really the build out and of the Bruce facilities up in Kincardine. And that whole startup, the refurbishment there, and then at OPG in Darlington, has been a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year project. And normally when you talk about that, taxpayers get scared because they think, oh my God, it's going to be over budget and over time. And yet those multi-billion-dollar projects have been brought in on time, on budget. What's really been the key to delivering that, John? Because you've been a key part of that infrastructure.
Well, I think there's a few things that were enabling that great performance. I think first of all, we've got some operators that are highly skilled at what they do, and not just operating the plants, but modifying them, maintaining them, life extending them. So they have created I'd say a magnificent capability that is globally unique in their ability to execute really large, complex projects. And then they engage the supply chain, companies like ours, really well, and they integrate us into that. Canada has a fantastic supply chain where they can rely on most of the products and services coming from Canadian companies. And that also helps, especially when you think about what we went through with a pandemic where you don't want to be relying on a supply chain from offshore. All of that, I think, contributes to the performance that we've seen.
Right. And Maura, from Candu's perspective, because clearly these are showcase Candu reactors, how has that been done, and why should we take comfort that then going forward, as nuclear has its moment, that we're going to continue to be able to do it on that basis?
Really, this is that sort of saying that we stand on the shoulders of giants. We're incredibly lucky for the decisions that have been made in several decades ago to stand up a Canadian fleet and to grow a supply chain around that Canadian technology. I have to also give credit to our fantastic utilities who run these stations and collaboratively plan these projects and the funding. And everyone, I guess you've mentioned, right? Like our unions as well, our skilled trades. What it is an opportunity to practice on our own product and build out in Ontario and in Canada a skill set that enables us to do better every time we do a refurbishment, right? So on time and on budget until we are on budget and ahead of schedule.
Fantastic. Both of you have mentioned the supply chain. Let's dig in a little bit more because aside from the great clean energy future we're creating enormous economic resilience in our communities. We're creating thousands upon thousands of incredibly high-paying jobs. And I think the last number I saw was, for instance, in the Bruce refurbishment, that something in the order of 96 cents of every dollar was spent right here in Ontario because that supply chain, the different pieces, has been built here.
Yeah, that's right. If you look at a map of where they procure from, it's remarkable that it's local, but it's also spread across certainly the province of Ontario and to some extent Canada. And we find that we can buy almost everything we need to make our products in Canada. Now there are some things that we do go offshore for, but vast majority of that is coming from Ontario suppliers and mostly around the facilities that we operate in. And I think that's true for all the supply chain.
I mean, if we look at from the really high level, energy is a pillar of a strong economy, right? And when we talk about energy security, we think about it in terms of access to energy, but also control over its reliability. And so if we want to drive economic resilience, we really need a resilient energy system. And when you have a supply chain, it's 250 plus companies or suppliers working within the nuclear supply chain, you have that security. So you can have an incredibly reliable product, which we do in the Candu reactors. But what we can do is we can service them, right? And that's what builds that piece that is resilience.
Well, and when you look at that resilience and you look at the economic spin-offs of all of this, it's also been an area where a tremendous amount of work has been done with First Nations, both in training individuals to participate in the high-paying trade jobs, but also being real partners. Both of you have mentioned the medical isotope side. That's an area, but tell me a little bit more about how this is impacting communities across Ontario, across Canada, and in particular our First Nations communities.
Mm. I mean, our First Nations or the First Nations, Indigenous communities in Canada are rights holders, and they are fantastic partners, and they are the ones that really enable these large-scale projects to go through. They seek the due diligence that demonstrates that there is a long-term protection and benefit to both their territories and community. And I think that's fundamentally important when we look at Canada as a nation that is inclusive and has true economic resilience, where our people in general and these First Nations are benefiting from a strong nuclear energy production.
Yeah, I think there's some great examples where First Nations are really benefiting from what we're doing. So with Bruce Power and the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation have a remarkable partnership on producing isotopes and delivering what is one of the most important therapeutic isotopes in the world. So that's one example, but certainly others in the supply chain have really strong partnerships. I mean, a great one is Cameco, right? We have this kind of great capability to mine and process our own fuel here. But that's done, of course, in First Nations territories, and there's incredible employment, which is really driving benefit for those nations, and that's repeated again and again in the supply chain. Right, it is a real sort of priority of the entire nuclear supply chain to make sure that we all have good relationships with the First Nations where we operate.
Right. I want to dig in a little bit on the medical isotope side because it's an area that more people are becoming aware of all the time, but less known than the sort of the power side of nuclear energy. In an earlier incarnation, I was CEO of Prostate Cancer Canada, and so the use of medical isotopes is crucial in giving patients and their families more hope and longer lives and better results. And the fascinating thing about medical isotopes through the Candu reactor fleet that we have here in Ontario is that you can actually harvest those isotopes at scale, not in small research reactors, but at scale, while energy is being produced. And that's really a game changer on a global basis.
It absolutely is. So when you think about the Candu reactors, they're uniquely capable of producing isotopes because they're natural uranium fueled, and that just creates the environment that you want. We have on our reactors the world's highest production, most reliable isotope systems now on our reactors, and that is globally unique. And it's a capacity that has never been available before. The supply chain has been disrupted by the fact that supply has not been steady for isotopes. But we are, completely changing that paradigm, and I think that's, something that will tremendously benefit the health of people around the world because these products are delivered around the world.
Yeah.
And it's really part of that economic resilience as well. I mean, you look at the availability for us to conduct research, for us to do to learn, for our schools to be part of this. It's really an incredible opportunity, and for us to have that impact globally really says something about what Canada delivers on a global scale.
Right. So the nuclear moment isn't just in Ontario, isn't just in Canada. The world is seeing the importance of this from an energy security standpoint as Russia started to close in on Europe in terms of natural gas, and lots of interest within the European market after years of being a little hesitant on this front. So quite apart on that economic resilience, quite apart from what we can do locally, this can also be a source of incredible international trade opportunity and growth for Canada. And Candu's been a key part of that. Tell us a little bit about the plans there and the places where the global fleet is already in place and where it might grow.
I mean, absolutely. Candu is Canada's only Indigenous technology, right? By IP and export license, the Candu product goes globally, right? So when we build at home, we send a message like we have in the past when the initial fleet was built out domestically and in the world. We send a message that we stand behind our product, right? And then that royalty and that sales goes globally, comes back to Canada, right? We're also an incredible partner, and I think you can attest to this with BWXT. Globally, we are friendly, and I mean trade friendly. We share our learnings, our OPEX. We stand up a fleet in cooperation with 5 countries internationally, including our domestic fleet.
Fantastic. And your firm is involved in a lot of that because key parts of what needs to be built is built by your people.
Yeah, we're seeing really fantastic demand, I think unprecedented internationally speaking. And a lot of that is, coming from the Candu fleet. But, the other great thing that having nuclear energy in Canada has helped us with is our ability to leverage that expertise to serve all kinds of technologies around the world, right? So for companies like ours that are looking to export, we've been able to catch the demand that's coming from SMRs and advanced reactors, which is, another benefit, right, to just leverage our capabilities that we developed here in Canada.
Yeah, 100%. Tell us a little bit about why a process like the Green Ribbon Panel is important as we map out that energy secure, economically resilient, clean energy future that we're all working towards.
If we want to be a clean energy superpower, we need to attract the private investment and have that and balance that risk with government investment. And I think, a part of that is key stakeholders getting together to speak to government with, and produce the ideas that will help the government de-risk these projects and these investments, right? So this is about putting our oars in the water at the same time and paddling in the same direction to become that energy superpower.
Yeah, we're at a key point, right, in our nation's future, and we've got to make some key decisions here, right? And I think Green Ribbon Panel brings a bunch of disparate voices together to really help to guide our government and how they think about where to go. And I think our message is nuclear energy in Canada is here to help solve some of the challenging problems that we face in terms of uh, clean energy, reliable energy, independence, great jobs, and great economic benefit at a time when all of that is needed.
Right. So the first federal budget landed. There's some good pieces, some of the pieces responding to recommendations made by the Green Ribbon Panel. What are the next kind of key milestones and pieces that we need to see to really turbocharge that future?
Mhm. I think we finished the job on the ITCs. There's a commitment there, which is excellent. I'd like to see, harmonization
And
to
ITCs, let's
oh,
explain that
sorry.
for people at home.
Our investment tax
Great.
credits, right? And we'd like to see a blend between the provincial and federal funding for Indigenous funding to enable these communities to have the resources and the financing to participate at a partner level on these major infrastructure builds.
Right.
Yeah, we've seen some good progress. What we now need to see is enough support from a government policy perspective to provide predictability for private investors to feel comfortable, and that is important in something like nuclear, where it is high upfront capital, but over the life of the assets that we created, it makes very economical and affordable power. And so I think we're seeing movement towards that, but we need to make sure that we capture that the capital that we need, and that the risk is properly balanced.
All right. Now, one of the risks that, quite frankly, kept the nuclear industry from moving forward as quickly as we might have all liked was always the concern around how we deal with waste. And where is the thinking on that, and where is the activity on the waste storage disposal after use in the process?
I mean, not that I'll answer on behalf of the NWMO,
Right.
but really they have strong plans in place. They have strong collaboration with Indigenous communities and First Nations. We have an end-to-end process. We know all of our waste at any point where it is, and when it goes into the deep geological repository, which is still being planned for, we have complete traceability. This is incredible, right? That we are accountable in this industry for our fuel and to waste.
Great.
Yeah, maybe just to build on that, I think there are not that many industries where they know exactly where their wastes are, and it's controlled and it's funded in terms of disposal and ultimate end of life of those assets. And we are making good progress in terms of an ultimate geological disposal site for waste. And I think that's unique in terms of the world. A lot of nations are struggling with that, but Canada's making a lot of progress with that.
John, you mentioned that you have positioned yourselves to deal with the multiple technologies. Obviously, Candu, an important one from our perspective, not the only, but Candu has the virtue of being able to use uranium in a less enriched format than the other technologies. And once you get into enrichment, we're not masters of our own domain. That has to go to the U.S. or elsewhere. What's the thinking in terms of as we build out what role enrichment can and should be having to provide us with greater security and resiliency?
Well, I think it's a major decision that we face here. Enrichment has, a bunch of challenges to it, right? First and foremost, just the fact that it can lead in a bad way, a weaponized perspective. But there's it's very significant cost to it, which is why in North America there's been very little enrichment going on for quite a while. So I think we have to think about that in terms of whether that's where Canada wants to go as a nation and have policies around that. I think that we're going to have fuel that is enriched operating in reactors here, and so we will have some dependence, and we just have to make sure we have the right trade relationships and supply lines that are capable of supporting that. And then we'll see, how far do we go with that? And I guess if we end up with a lot more enrichment in the country, we'll have to think about that policy very carefully.
I mean, similarly to BWXT, Candu and the Greater Atkins-Realis, we have experience in other types of reactor technologies and a skill set, and really fundamentally, other organizations that do built that pedigree around the Candu product, which is incredible. It's strengthened our ability to work on other technologies. I mean, really, Candu was founded at a time, the Cold War was part of that story, and it was a really a pillar to make sure that we were using unenriched uranium. I mean, really, the decision to use enriched uranium or work on those technologies, within our country, I'd have to agree with you, John. It's something where we have to really consider our policy and our relationships, but just to make sure that we are mindful of our sovereign control over our supply chain and what we produce, and who we work with.
Right. As we look at the issue of energy security and you think about what's happening and what is aspired to in electrification of transportation, in the rollout of more data centers that are gobbling up enormous amounts of power, how are we positioned currently with power generation, and why does nuclear need to be a part or should be a part of getting to that gap that seems to be created between what it is that we hope for and that we're moving towards and where we are now?
But we're going to need more power, quite a bit
Yeah.
more power. I think every nation is seeing that. I would say, and when you think back over time here, what we're seeing for demand for power, we haven't seen for decades, right? And so, AI is coming, and it's going to need a lot of power. And even if it becomes more efficient than it is today, it's going to need a lot of power. But as you said, electrification and other things drive that, and just the growth of our economy. Hopefully, more local manufacturing, which demands electricity. So all of that is a pretty strong signal that we need to build out. And I think all forms of power are helpful and diversity is good. But nuclear offers this reliability that is unique, right? Where, high operating, what we call capacity factor, where the power's on most of the time. It doesn't rely on the weather or the wind or time of day. In fact, it's very resistant to any sort of climate change factors. So you get this very reliable and affordable form of power that is a backbone or a base load that will deliver that energy that we need.
Yeah, really just it's that safe, reliable, net zero, affordable power that is the base load that enables really any other type of energy production, and that's really why it's relevant to this energy demand or meeting this future energy demand.
Now, clearly, Canada, Ontario are major global players, world-class players in this, but we're not alone. There are others who are competing in this space, and who do we need to be watching out for, and why is this a competition, if you will, where we need to have all our ducks in order to be able to compete and continue to compete and win globally?
Well, certainly the Americans are investing a lot in power generation in general, but in nuclear in particular, right? They have some very well-funded advanced reactor development programs. And so, that's something that we need to watch and be mindful of. And I think look at in case, how do we develop our policy and how do we support our own industry here to be able to compete? Europe, similar trend, maybe not quite as aggressive as the Americans, but also, investing heavily, trying to drive clean energy in certain nations there. And certainly coming out of Asia, we're seeing some strong competition, right? Where they are supported by their governments with export financing and policy. And so we need to match that and be able to compete.
I mean, I really have to give credit to the Americans with that $80 billion investment into an American technology, an American IP, an American export license, right? They are standing up a fleet. They're nuclear, and they understand the impact on their supply chain. To support that brings money right back into the U.S., and that's nation-building decision-making, and Canada is capable of that. We did that with our current CANDU fleet, right? And we took it globally because we believed in and built and used and we have proven our own technology to be able to have these discussions at a global scale, right? We look at us embarking on the C34, which would be the Cernavoda 3-4 in Romania. And we would not be having those discussions. We would not be having that global impact and that relationship, that positive international relationship at this scale, had we not invested in ourselves as Canadians decades ago.
Right. And part of that American announcement, as I understand it, is also with two incredible Canadian companies, with Cameco and Brookfield being part of the Westinghouse rollout in at least part of that fleet announcement for the Americans.
I mean, absolutely. And it really does go back to having that pedigree in Canada founded on Canadian technology and our ability to invest in ourselves, to believe in ourselves, and to make sure that we had a global impact. And I think that's really stood them up for that success. Cameco has been producing our mining uranium for, from the very start, and they're a very strong, incredible Canadian company, and give them credit for that.
I think it's just a great signal that how important nuclear power is, to Western nations, and that needs to be supported, and government's a part of that, right? And so, that kind of deal, it just is a positive signal for the whole industry globally.
What did you find most productive, most important about your experience on the Green Ribbon panel? And were there any surprises, good, bad, or indifferent, along the way?
I think I'm surprised by the positive impact, right? It's, you get this panel together and you have these group of stakeholders and you aspire to put a story together and to deliver that to policymakers. And I think the budget made it evident that we are heard. And that's a fundamental important step for us to go forward together in making sure that we have a good, strong nuclear build out and a net zero future.
I was pleased and surprised by the alignment on the panel, right? There's quite a diverse group of individuals there representing, many interests, right? And yet I think we come together and align really well and easily, and come up with our key policy statements that we're hoping to see succeed. And it's been great to just see that kind of alignment and unity amongst that diverse panel.
Yeah, and we're interviewing all kinds of different members through this series. One of the interesting groups, obviously, is the labor component of all of this, and we will be talking to labor representatives from the panel, but as representatives from management, if you will. Not always the case that you have that collaboration and that open discussion and dialogue between management and labor. How has that been working out through the panel, and also in your day to day, because it continues far beyond the work of the panel?
We are remarkably fortunate, I would say, in our industry to have really great labor relations. Most of our companies are unionized and have collective bargaining agreements. But I think there's a tremendous amount of harmony, between labor and management and the companies. And so, that is a hallmark. And that leads to this alignment in terms of policy and how we approach government together that is, I think, unique and it really beneficial to see that these jobs that we create are really good jobs, right? And so there is this, I think, this support for each other, right? Because it is symbiotic, that companies can't do well without really great skilled workers, and skilled workers need, companies to do well. And so I find there's a tremendous amount of harmony.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think this is a fantastic opportunity to support our skilled labor, right? And we are going to be doing work differently in the future, and we need to make sure that we are investing with our skilled labor to keep them as historically efficient and incredible partners at backing these mega projects. Fundamentally, these projects are not built without our skilled labor. So this is, we can coordinate and collaborate and giving them all of the tools, or working to develop all of the tools that they will have and use in the future.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with Ken Hardwick, then of OPG, and I asked him what keeps him up at night, and he said, where am I going to get my next welder? And, for all of you considering careers out there, welders through the Darlington Project, we're making six-figure salaries. So this is an incredible opportunity for our young people going forward.
Yeah, we're hiring at the moment in our shop about a person a day, right? And welders is the biggest problem we face. We are fortunate that there's a lot of skilled people, and the college system is excellent, so we're getting those people. But it is a challenge, and they make a good living doing that, and also engineers and all the other folks that you need to do what we're doing.
Yeah, we are unified certainly across this industry and wanting well-paying, reliable jobs that stand up Canadian families. Most certainly, I think that that's something we all agree on.
Okay. So just to wrap up, if you can get one thing, one additional thing done that's going to help us towards this future, and I know you sometimes mentioned about becoming a clean energy superpower. James Gagnac and others would remind us that we are a clean energy superpower. But one thing that's going to help that superpower become a superhero, what can we do next?
I think we need to come together with a policy that says we're going to commit to a fleet of additional reactors, right? It really stimulates the entire supply chain when there's that kind of commitment to move ahead, right? And so we need policy that says that government supports that at all levels of government, and we need to then see that that supports capital flowing into it, and the supply chain, of course, starts to respond, and it creates a lot of jobs. And so thinking big with this terminology, no regrets decisions, is, I think, exactly what we need to see to really take us to the next level.
I fully agree. It's a fleet-wide strategy. I'd really only add to that we need to streamline our siting. We need to be able to embark on these projects and basically get moving. You mentioned that pivotal moment in Canada, so we really need to work together to make sure that we are not in our own way.
Right. Certainly the refurbishments and the build out of the supply chain right here in Canada put us in this amazing position. And now it's how do we leverage it going forward? Thank you very much for contributing to the discussion and to the work of the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.